My husband's laughter filled the courtroom, a cold, arrogant sound that wasn't meant to be funny, but to humiliate. He looked at me not as his wife, but as the final asset to be liquidated. "I'll take half her millions," he declared, his voice dripping with false pity for the judge. "After all, she's nothing without me." He thought the game was over. He had no idea his entire world was about to be destroyed by the simple manila envelope resting in my hands. Before we dive into today's story, take a moment to share where you're watching from. We love seeing how our stories bring people together from every corner of the world. Your thoughts and comments are what make this community so special, and we're truly grateful to have you here, if you haven't already. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss a new story filled with drama, resilience, and unexpected twists. Now, settle in, get comfortable, and maybe grab your favorite drink because this is a tale you won't want to miss. Let's get started. My name is Clara Hayes, and for a time, I believed I was living in a fairy tale. It began not with a castle, but with a legacy. A faded leather journal filled with my grandmother's handwritten recipes for elixirs and creams. That journal was the soul of Aria Botanics, the organic skincare company I built from the ground up. It had become a $50 million empire, celebrated globally not just for its products, but for its unwavering commitment to integrity. My grandmother had instilled that in me like a religion. At my side was my husband, Marcus Thorne. He was the brilliant, charming financial consultant who helped shape my passion into a powerhouse brand, while I was the heart of the company, the creator who understood the secret language of herbs and oils. Marcus was the brain. He managed the supply chains, negotiated the contracts, and navigated the complex world of finance, freeing me to do what I loved most. I trusted him completely, giving him full authority over our shared finances, believing we were an unbreakable team building a shared dream. The first hint of a crack came during an awards gala where Aria Botanics was being honored for its ethical business practices. Marcus was beside me as I accepted the crystal trophy. On stage, I spoke about my grandmother's core philosophy that truth and purity should be the primary ingredients in everything you create. The applause was warm and validating. When I returned to our table, Marcus kissed me, his eyes shining with what I mistook for pride. Later, he leaned in and whispered, "You know, darling, we could increase our profit margins by 20% if we sourced a similar extract from a different supplier. Nearly identical." Chemically speaking, a knot tightened in my stomach. Nearly isn't Aria Botanics. Marcus, you know that. It's about the source, the energy, the entire process. He simply smiled, a placating gesture that dismissed my concern. Of course, my love, just thinking like a businessman. But as he turned away, I saw a flicker of annoyance in his eyes before it was quickly extinguished. That night, as I watched him sleep, the man I loved more than anything, I couldn't shake a feeling of unease. He looked so peaceful, yet the memory of his cold, calculating suggestion echoed in my mind. I told myself I was being overly sensitive, that the pressure of success was making me paranoid. For weeks, I pushed the feeling down, burying it under the daily demands of running a global brand. Life continued its beautiful rhythm, filled with product launches and quiet evenings where Marcus would tell me how proud he was of the empire we were building together. The discovery that shattered my world came from my own hands, from the very products I had created. I was in my private lab, a sanctuary of glass beakers and the fragrant scent of lavender and rose, inspecting a new batch of our best-selling night cream, the Elysian Bloom. I knew my formulas intimately, the precise texture, the complex layers of scent, but this time, something was wrong. I dipped my finger into the pearlescent cream. The texture was almost perfect, but it lacked the subtle, velvety finish I knew so well. I brought it to my nose. The top notes were there, but the deep, earthy undertone of a rare orchid extract from a sustainable farm in Costa Rica was missing. Its absence screamed at me. A cold, sickening dread washed over me. Trusting my intuition, I took a sample and sent it to a highly respected independent laboratory for analysis. I told no one, especially not Marcus. I paid for the rush analysis with my personal funds, my hand trembling as I filled out the forms. Part of me was terrified of what I might find, and a darker part was terrified that I would find nothing at all. 2 weeks later, an encrypted email arrived. The lab report was a secure PDF, and as I opened it, my heart pounded. The document was pages of cold, clinical data. I scrolled to the summary, and the words on the screen seemed to blur. My breath hitched. The report confirmed my worst fears, and then revealed a betrayal far deeper than I could have imagined. The rare orchid extract, the heart of the formula, was completely absent. In its place was a common, cheap synthetic compound known for mimicking its scent. The pure, organic avocado oil had been replaced with a mineral oil base, and the report flagged synthetic preservatives that were not only against our company's ethos, but were also known potential skin irritants. Someone was poisoning my company from the inside out. With growing horror, I cross-referenced the batch number with our internal inventory system. The system showed the raw materials for this batch had been sourced from a new supplier. I'd never heard of, a company called Alchemic Solutions. My blood ran cold. I did a quick search on the state's corporate registry and found the incorporation documents for Alchemic Solutions. Listed as the sole proprietor and signatory was a name that made the world tilt on its axis: Marcus Thorne. The air left my lungs in a single, ragged gasp. It wasn't just an affair. It wasn't just stealing money. This was a betrayal of my life's work, of my grandmother's legacy, of the trust of millions of customers. He had been systematically replacing the pure heart of Aria Botanics with a cheap, synthetic lie, all while looking me in the eye every single day and telling me he loved me. The man I shared my bed with was not my partner. He was my saboteur. For a full day, I was paralyzed by grief. The pain was a physical, crushing weight. Every shared laugh, every tender moment was now tainted, replaying in my mind as part of a monstrous deception. But as the sun set, the grief cooled, hardening into something cold, sharp, and resolute. He had mistaken my kindness for weakness. He was about to find out how wrong he was. I did not confront him. A direct confrontation would only give him the chance to lie and destroy the evidence. Instead, I began to play the most difficult role of my life, the loving, unsuspecting wife. I smiled when he kissed me. I asked about his day. I slept beside him at night, all the while feeling like a stranger in my own skin. My silence was my new weapon. The next morning, I made an appointment with Sophia Chen, a legend in New York legal circles known for handling complex high-asset divorces. I told her everything, my voice steady despite the storm raging inside me. I showed her the lab report and the incorporation documents. Sophia listened without interruption, her expression unreadable. When I finished, she said, "This is not just a divorce case, Clara. This is corporate espionage and massive commercial fraud. He hasn't just betrayed you. He has exposed the entire company to catastrophic risk." She then asked a question that would change everything. "Your company was built on your grandmother's legacy. Do you have her will?" I brought the thick sealed envelope to Sophia's office. Together, we read through the dense legal language. On page 5, tucked away in a subclause, we found it. A provision my grandmother, a woman who had seen her share of betrayals, had insisted her lawyer include. Sophia read it aloud, She called it a poison pill clause. It stated, in no uncertain terms, that the intellectual property, the entire journal of formulas, was bequeathed to me under the strict condition that its integrity was maintained. If the core formulas were ever willfully altered with synthetic or inferior ingredients for financial gain by myself or a related party, the commercial rights to the entire legacy would be immediately and irrevocably forfeited. They would be transferred to a nonprofit trust. Marcus didn't know. In his arrogance, he had never bothered to read the fine print. He thought he was robbing me of my company, but what he was actually doing was methodically destroying the very asset he was trying to claim. A slow, cold smile spread across my face for the first time in weeks. We had him. We just needed to prove it was his hand on the trigger. On Sophia's advice, we hired a private investigator who specialized in financial forensics. While the PI dug into the money trail, I continued my performance at home. It was the hardest thing I've ever done. I watched Marcus meticulously plan his next moves, completely unaware that I was watching him back. He started arguments, trying to provoke me, and I later realized he was likely recording me, trying to build a case that I was emotionally unstable. I refused to give him the satisfaction. I remained calm, composed, a mask of serene indifference. The private investigator's report was the final nail in the coffin. It contained a series of photographs showing Marcus meeting with the CEO of our biggest competitor, shaking hands outside a private downtown club. The PI had also uncovered encrypted emails between them. The plan was clear. Marcus would use the cheap ingredients to trigger a wave of consumer complaints and recalls, destroying Arya Botanic's reputation. Then, in the chaos of the divorce, he would sell the weakened company for parts to the competitor, walking away with millions. Armed with an arsenal of irrefutable evidence, the lab reports, the will, the financial trail, the photographs, we were ready. We let Marcus make the first move. Just as we anticipated, he filed for divorce. His petition a masterpiece of fiction. It painted me as an erratic, emotional artist incapable of running a business, and him as the long-suffering genius who had built the empire and deserved half of it. The stage was set for the final act, the day of the final hearing. The air in the courtroom was thick with tension. Marcus sat beside his lawyer, looking confident and polished. He smiled at me, a condescending, pitying look meant to unnerve me. It no longer had any power. I met his gaze with a calm emptiness that seemed to confuse him. He expected tears and anger. He was not prepared for the quiet storm that was about to break. His lawyer presented their case, painting a picture of Marcus as the strategic mind behind my creative spirit. Then, Marcus himself took the stand. He spoke of his sacrifices, of the long nights he spent modernizing my outdated family business. He looked at the judge, his voice filled with feigned sincerity. "She's a wonderful artist, Your Honor, but she is not a businesswoman. Without me, Arya Botanics would still be a hobby. Those jars of cream are worthless without my strategy." Then he turned, his eyes locking on mine, and delivered the final arrogant blow. "I'll take half her millions," he declared with a contemptuous laugh. "Frankly, I think I deserve more for having to manage her artistic temperament. I'm entitled to it." The courtroom was silent. The judge looked at me, a flicker of something like sympathy in her eyes. This was my moment. I stood up slowly. "Your Honor," I said, my voice clear and steady, "I have one final piece of evidence I would like to present." I walked to the front of the courtroom, placing a manila envelope on the judge's bench. She slid its contents onto her desk. The entire courtroom watched as she began to read. I saw her expression shift from professional curiosity to utter disbelief, and finally, to a cold, simmering fury. She read the lab report, her lips tightening. Then she read the highlighted clause from my grandmother's will, her eyes widening. Finally, she examined the bank statements from Alchemic Solutions, tracing the flow of money into an offshore account under Marcus's name. She set the papers down, stacking them into a neat pile. She removed her glasses, cleaned them slowly, and put them back on. Her gaze now fixed on my husband. The silence in the room was absolute. "Mr. Thorne," Judge Miller said, her voice cutting through the silence like a shard of ice. "In your petition, you claim to be the architect of this company's success. You claim that you deserve half of its value because of your contributions." "Yes, Your Honor, that is correct," Marcus said, a sliver of uncertainty now creeping into his voice. "Well, the evidence presented here tells a very different story," the judge continued, her voice rising with controlled anger. "It tells the story of a man who systematically committed fraud, replacing high-quality ingredients with cheap, synthetic fillers. It tells the story of a man who endangered his own customers for profit. And most interestingly," she said, picking up the copy of the will, "it tells the story of a man who, through his own greed, has managed to render the primary asset of this company commercially worthless to himself." Marcus's face went white. He stared at me, his mouth opening and closing, but no sound came out. The mask had shattered, revealing the desperate, greedy man underneath. "Therefore," Judge Miller declared, her voice booming through the courtroom, "the court dismisses all of your claims. You will receive nothing from this marital estate. Furthermore, based on the evidence of commercial fraud, conspiracy, and consumer endangerment presented here, I am ordering that this file be sent immediately to the district attorney's office for criminal investigation. Bailiffs, take Mr. Thorne into custody." Everything happened in a blur. As they pulled him to his feet, he finally found his voice, a desperate, pathetic cry. "Clara, please tell them we can fix this. I love you." I stood tall and met his frantic gaze for the last time. "No." "Marcus," I said, my voice quiet but heard by everyone in the silent room. "You didn't love me. You loved a formula. And you misread the ingredients." As they led him away, a single tear finally escaped and rolled down my cheek. It wasn't a tear of sadness, but of release. I was free. The months that followed were challenging. I held a press conference and told the world the entire, ugly truth. I initiated a full recall of every tainted batch, costing the company millions. But our customers didn't abandon us. My radical honesty was met with an outpouring of support. My grandmother's legacy, once threatened, was now stronger than ever, forged not just in purity, but in resilience. Sometime later, I found myself walking through a new botanical garden funded by my grandmother's trust. A young journalist asked what the biggest lesson I learned was. I paused, looking at the vibrant plants around me. "My grandmother taught me how to create formulas that could heal the skin," I said, a genuine smile finally reaching my eyes. "My ex-husband taught me how to read the ingredients of a person. And I've learned that the most important legacy isn't what you sell, but the integrity you refuse to compromise." Life's most profound lessons are often born from our deepest wounds. It's in the aftermath of shattered trust that we learn to look beyond the glittering surface, to read the true ingredients not just in what people offer, but in who they are. We discover that resilience is not the absence of scars, but the strength to grow around them, cultivating a quiet wisdom that can never be stolen or devalued. Ultimately, we come to understand that the greatest legacy we can build or protect is our own integrity and invisible, unshakable foundation that determines the real worth of everything we touch and create in this world. Thank you so much for joining us on this powerful and emotional journey. Every story of resilience has a turning point that speaks to us. What moment in this tale resonated most deeply with you? We would be honored to read your thoughts in the comments below, as your perspective is what breathes life into our community. If you were moved by this story, please consider subscribing and turning on notifications. You won't want to miss the next chapter we share together.